Thank you. I will just give a short introduction and leave the floor to Mikael from Astra. We're in the very beginning of the transformation, probably. If we look in the future, if we look back on 2023, probably we'll see in the very beginning. We don't know. In this transformation of industry and society, we need to approach, of course, every aspect, every process, every system. I think, Philip, you gave a good introduction to our presentation, actually, because if we look at assets, physical assets, and how do we invest, how do we design them from the beginning to be circular and resource efficient, then this is an area not emphasized as much as products. And you saw it because it's your field, so you had that eyes, those glasses on, so you saw it when you read the sustainability report. And this is a project we have got funding from Vinnova to look at how you design and how you invest green from the start. If you look at the big investments up north, it's estimated to about 1,100 billion SEK for some years now. In the steel business, iron ore, LKAB, also in the battery in Northvolt. And if you think about it, we are hearing a lot about it, we read a lot about it, but do we hear anything about how they invest in these physical assets, the factories of all these companies? Personally, I have not read anything. And if you look at the production system, there's quite a lot of physical assets in the facilities, in the media infrastructure, in the production equipment, in the manufacturing machines, and so on. And do we take on the approach that Matthias was talking about, design for? Do we look at design for on how we invest in our physical assets, in our CapEx? That is what we like to really put more emphasis on, because what we know is that the length of life of the equipment and machines and everything is very long. So if we invest now, we continue to invest in a linear way, we will live with these equipment machines in 20, 30, maybe even 40 years from now. If you go to the capital-heavy business in the process industry up north, it is the length of life are very long in the process industry. What we are approaching is an area, but it's also about the mindset, because if you have that mindset, then I think a lot will follow. So by that, Mikael, we are now in this project together, AstraZeneca, Volvo Construction Equipment, Scania, Electroautomatik, that's an equipment supplier, and KTH, MDU, and RISE. And we have worked for less than a year on this subject, and we'll continue for a couple of years more. The really interesting thing is that even before this project, Mikael had initiated these thoughts at Astra, and you will hear a really interesting presentation of how they are now working to make sure that they think right from the beginning. They think about the design process, the specifications on these investments, how they work together with the equipment suppliers to make sure that make it right from the beginning, also in the investments, not only in the products. So by that, stage is yours, Mikael.
Thank you, Monica. Mikael Bohman, AstraZeneca here in Södertälje. I work with capital projects. I guess a lot of you people have probably seen this before, and what I think is important here is that we can also apply this thinking to a production system. But bear in mind, I mean, once it's designed, built, and installed, I will say the window of opportunity for a change is really, really limited. And normally it comes with a cost as well. So we really have to live a long time with our early decisions. But just to put this a little bit into a context here is that our area here is the manufacturing here in Södertälje, AstraZeneca, and this is one of the largest tablet factories in the world here as well. And if we're talking about the capital projects, the portfolio that we are running here, we annually invest approximately between 1 and 1.5 billion Swedish crowns, and we are running about 200 ongoing capital projects. Of course, I mean, if we can implement a sustainable green design into 200 ongoing projects, and we're adding more and more projects every year, of course, it will have a really, really big impact on AstraZeneca's future environmental footprint, I would say. So, why green design then? Well, of course, AstraZeneca, as all major companies today, has environmental targets that we try to reach. And for us, it's that we're supposed to be carbon negative 2030 and also have a net zero greenhouse gas emissions of 2045. For capital projects, of course, we have to contribute to deliver these goals as well. But we also understood that we are facing a lot of challenges just to deliver this. And as Monica mentioned, we're not just talking about economical and technical lifespan, but also the conceptual lifespan of a capital investment. And I will say, normally I think that the conceptual lifespan is probably the longest. It's so easy just to copy-paste and transfer an old conceptual lifespan. You also mentioned, I mean, the equipment has a long lifespan, normally about 20 to 30 years what we install here in our capital projects. And I mean, if you go back up there, we're supposed to work towards goals 2030 and 2045. I mean, that means really that what we design and install today, it's what we're going to be measured on in the future. And if you look at the 2030 goals, that's probably, hopefully we did the right design 15 years ago. So it's really, really a long lifespan all the time here. And also the scope of the investments tend to look at the product, the actual product by itself, and not that much about the production system. But bear in mind as well, I mean, the production systems also has a long lifespan. It generates a lot of waste, and of course, there is quite high running cost. So if we can look a little bit broader and look at the production system, there's a lot to gain here, I would say. We're also facing the problem that we internally from our customers don't really have a sustainable push, I will say. We have a lot of requirements, user requirements, technical specifications, but they are not really addressed towards our environmental requirements, I will say. We don't really have any green KPIs for capital projects. There is not really a green culture how to deliver capital projects, I will say. And also, we don't have supporting processes that will help us a lot all the time, I will say. Because it's not that easy when you have a project scope and then you are facing the steering committee and say that, oh, we really want to expand this scope. It will cost you a couple more millions. It's not that easy. We don't really have procurement processes that works towards circularity. We don't have any targets how to measure CO2 emissions or CO2 equivalent emissions. So it's not that easy for a capital project to measure success. And I will say all of this together was sort of the starting point for our development of green design. So how do we apply green design, and what is green design? I would say green design is not that complex, as I will tell you. It's quite a simple process, but it's a complex question, so I would say. First of all, we have a process, and the purpose of this process, this green design process, is really to evaluate sustainable ideas, sustainable suggestions for the capital projects, each one of these 200 capital projects. And then we want to evaluate those suggestions. We want to decide if we can implement some of them, and then we will implement them in the project scope, and then follow up and pick up the learnings. So this is more like a lean green process, I will say. This is sort of the foundation or the baseline, I will say. What we call it is a green design event. This is a brainstorming session that we perform early on in this process. As you can see, you probably can't see it, but up there, this green design process is really linked towards the capital delivery process. What we try to do here is to have this green design event as early as possible in the concept phase of a project, because it's so much easier to affect the scope of the project then. So what we do here is that we gather the project team, and I will say the more the merrier. It's really a success factor to have a lot of different roles, and especially the people who are really close to the process or close to the manufacturing area. So I will say the operators, maintenance, etc. is key people, and the sponsor as well. And what we do there is we sit down here and we have a 2-hour session. It's more like a brainstorming session. What kind of ideas can we generate? So we don't try to solve any problems here, just generate the ideas. This session is also moderated by a facilitator. We have a green design team. We are 4 people who is working to develop this, I will say, this green design process, or the toolbox, or whatever we call it. And we always facilitate these kind of events. And when we're talking about this one, it's not just a brainstorming session out of the blue, because we have 30 different questions, and they are divided into 8 different categories. 4 categories into the process and 4 out from the process. And all of these questions are very, very, very open, simple yes and no questions. And if we answer yes to a question, okay, what could be the solution? What kind of idea could we implement here? And if it's a no, we just let it go. And what we're talking about these categories, we're talking about energy consumption, it is the process material, it is equipment and the facilities, and also different water qualities. And out from the process, we are talking about emissions. It is the actual product that we manufacture, it is waste, and waste for us is everything that's not included in the final product. And also emissions, water here. A typical example of a question could be like, is there any risk that an old conceptual design is copied into the new investment? Or is it possible to invest in recycled material? So it's more like, yes or no, can we do that? And then it's up to the team and the brainstorming session to take it into the project. But it's a little bit more than just these, because we have developed what we call a toolbox, a green design toolbox for this. I mentioned the process, but we also have the green design guide. And this is the template that follows the project from the brainstorming event and into implementation. So here is the template where we gather all the different improvements. We also evaluate the improvements, etc. I mentioned this about the categories, the questionnaire, and the green design event. And we always finish off the green design event by using a very simple, I would say, feasibility matrix. So what we do here is we're performing a first screening of all these suggestions, or all. I will say, when we do this brainstorming event, normally we go away with about 20 suggestions. I will say that's sort of an average. And now we do the first screening just to reduce the amount, to see if, no, this one will not give us so much payback, this one will cost too much, this is way out of our scope. And after that, then we have reduced the amount, and then we use what we call the echo estimation tool. And this tool is a way for us to understand, I will say, what kind of emissions, CO2 emissions, CO2 equivalent emissions, will this process run or generate, I will say, and also what is the running cost over time for this production system. So we can, on a really, really high level, compare these suggestions. We can compare suggestion A towards B towards C. We can also put a new process into this one to understand what kind of emissions will this generate over, say, 20 years' time, or and also the running costs for normally media consumption like steam, electricity, water, whatever. And this is, I will say, sort of the baseline to understand if a suggestion really is feasible and if it's worth taking it towards the steering committee. We also have a template, what we call like a ventilation model or an HVAC model, because indoor climate production is really costly when you're talking about medical production here. It costs us a lot to create the indoor climate. And this one is a way for us to measure as well the concept, I will say. If you look at a premises like this, we can put it into this model and see what will happen here if we reduce the air change rate, if we probably reduce the area, etc. And then we can also see what kind of emissions will that generate and what kind of cost will be reduced over time. And last but not least here, I will say we have this, what we call a project impact assessment. Because now we probably have found, say, 3 or 4 maybe suggestions that this project team thinks that, okay, this could be really good for our scope. But how will that affect our project? So then we have this also quite a simple model, and this is an impact assessment questions, I will say, so we understand how will this affect our scope, the schedule of the project, the cost of the project, the quality of the project, the resource needed, etc. And all of this together, hopefully we will have a couple of ideas that we can bring to the steering committee and see if we can have funding and acceptance to widen the scope for the capital project. And all of this is gathered together in what we call the Green Design Handbook, and this is more or less the playbook that summarizes the green design concept. But I will give you a couple of examples of output from green design events, just to understand here. If you look at the first one here was the project scope. It was like expand the area of a production facility. This was what I just mentioned about the HVAC. The idea was maybe we can lower the ceiling to get a reduced air volume to be exchanged. The output was, yes, we will have a reduced consumption of electricity, cooling and steam over time. Another one is that we're going to build a new dispensing facility for raw materials. We didn't think that the suppliers were always so efficient in how they were sending the materials to us. So it was just a simple, I will say, a discussion with the suppliers to see if they can change the size of the drums they deliver the material in, and also the length of the plastic bag. And that led us to a shortened dispensing time and a reduction in waste. And the last one was we needed to expansion the washing capacity for containers that we have products in. But instead of expanding the washing capacity, why don't reuse the containers instead? And in that way, we could reuse them several times instead of combustion, and we didn't need the washing capacity. So I will say, this is more like examples, not actually on the product that we're going to manufacture. It's more like on the production system that we have identified ideas. Oh, this is a lot of information. But where are we today? As Monica mentioned, we started this actually back in 2019, the first ideas. We generated the first version of this one and we tried it out on a green design event. We developed the handbook and we also introduced this one into our project model as a deliverable. But then COVID hit us and we had some sort of I will say, break for more or less 2 years before in 2022 we applied for funding from Vinnova, and we have Philip Magnusson now today. He is a colleague of mine. He wrote his master thesis here for green and circular capital investments in production industry, and I, through Vinnova, had the ability to work 2 days a week together with him. And we developed the Green Design Toolbox here. And we also had the opportunity to present this concept twice for the Delegation for Circular Economy on their seminars here as well. And then moving into 2023 and where we are today, I will say we have completed in total 16 green design events. So it starts to move a little bit, I will say. We have a 4-people management team that facilitates and try to develop this concept as well. And there is also a decision from the management team in capital projects that all capital projects should carry out a green design event. And Monica mentioned we have a new Vinnova project here together with a lot of companies here, among others Scania, Volvo, CE, RISE, etc., to try to develop this concept even further. We have a new master thesis by Sonja. It's ongoing, and she is looking at the relation between our requirements and our suppliers, equipment suppliers, the circular part of it. And we're also rolling out a training plan and a communication towards AstraZeneca internally. And we working with this green design future strategy, I will say. The next step is really for us to follow up on projects and how to bring in best practice into this model, try to develop KPIs for single capital projects that could be measured against, so that we really see that we can deliver something as well. And we will digitize this model as well, and we are just I would say in the beginning to start a green think tank here as well. And hopefully that will give us a lot back. So, but a couple of things to bring from our learning is that I will say think production system. That definitely increased the opportunities to reduce future environmental footprint here. And it will also give us a lot of more cost savings. And also the conceptual length of life. I mean, copy-paste an old design is really, really easy, but is it always the right way to go? No, I don't think so. I will say, don't shy away from complexity, because this is really difficult. I will say our model is definitely not complex. It's really easy, but so far it had given us quite a lot, I will say. But we have to challenge all the time. And I mean, we have to challenge the scope of our projects, the design that we are developing, our old ways of working, our suppliers, and also our higher management team to understand that this also comes with a cost, but it will give us a lot back. And if we start challenging this, hopefully it will give us a much greener company culture, and this is probably the most important thing, because now people start to talk about this, and we are not there that this is a natural part of capital project delivery, but at least it starts to give in some economical space, and we are talking about green requirements in the same way as we are discussing technical or economical or performance, etc. So it starts to move, I would say. With this last picture, I would say we just started this one. We didn't really know where we were going. We didn't have a full-scale model. We just said we have to do something, and we just picked up the learning by doing, I will say. So don't shy away from the complexity. And that was all from me. Thank you.